The Israeli-Palestinian conflict has been one of the most enduring and contentious disputes in the Middle East for decades. Recent events in Gaza, marked by escalating violence and civilian casualties, have once again thrust this conflict into the international spotlight. In the wake of these events, two significant players in the international arena, China and Saudi Arabia, have raised the possibility of imposing sanctions on Israel. This essay will explore the complex dynamics surrounding these proposed sanctions, examining the motivations, potential implications, and broader geopolitical context of such a move. The roots of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict run deep, but recent tensions have centered around Gaza, a Palestinian territory under the control of Hamas. The conflict escalated in May 2021 when tensions flared in East Jerusalem over Israeli attempts to evict Palestinian families from the Sheikh Jarrah neighborhood. This led to protests and clashes, further intensifying long-standing grievances on both sides. The situation deteriorated rapidly as Hamas launched rocket attacks into Israel, prompting Israeli airstrikes in retaliation. The conflict, which lasted for 11 days, resulted in the deaths of hundreds of Palestinians and a significant number of Israelis. The world watched in horror as images of destruction and suffering emerged from Gaza, drawing widespread condemnation. China, a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council and a significant global player, has expressed deep concern over the escalating violence in Gaza. Beijing's stance on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict has evolved over the years. Historically, China has maintained a diplomatic approach, emphasizing a two-state solution and peaceful negotiations as the only viable means to resolve the dispute. China's motivations for considering sanctions on Israel stem from its perceived role in the Gaza conflict. Beijing has criticized Israel's military actions in Gaza, particularly regarding the high civilian casualties and destruction of infrastructure. The Chinese government has called for an immediate ceasefire and expressed support for the Palestinian cause, portraying itself as a champion of Palestinian rights in the international arena. Furthermore, China's stance is also influenced by its desire to expand its influence in the Middle East and strengthen its position as a global power. Beijing has sought to cultivate closer ties with Arab nations and has invested heavily in infrastructure projects in the region as part of its Belt and Road Initiative. Supporting Palestinian rights and advocating for sanctions against Israel aligns with China's efforts to bolster its image as a responsible international actor. Saudi Arabia, a regional heavyweight in the Middle East, has also weighed in on the Gaza conflict and the possibility of imposing sanctions on Israel. Traditionally, Saudi Arabia has maintained strong diplomatic ties with the United States, which has been a staunch ally of Israel. However, recent developments have signaled a shift in the kingdom's approach. The Saudi leadership has been under pressure from its citizens and Arab allies to take a more assertive stance in support of the Palestinian cause. Public sentiment in Saudi Arabia has become increasingly critical of Israel's actions in Gaza, and there have been protests and calls for action within the kingdom. The shift in Saudi Arabia's stance can be attributed to several factors. First, the Saudi government seeks to maintain its credibility in the Muslim world and strengthen its position as the guardian of Islamic holy sites in Mecca and Medina. Supporting the Palestinian cause resonates with the sentiments of many Muslims globally, and enhances Saudi Arabia's standing in the Islamic world. Second, Saudi Arabia has been diversifying its alliances and reducing its reliance on the United States. This shift was already underway before the Gaza conflict, as Saudi leaders recognized the need to adapt to changing global dynamics. The kingdom has been developing closer ties with countries like China and Russia, which share its interests in the Middle East and offer alternatives to Western partnerships. The proposed sanctions by China and Saudi Arabia also need to be viewed in the broader context of the evolving geopolitical landscape in the Middle East. China has been steadily increasing its influence in the region through economic investments, arms sales, and diplomatic engagement. Its involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict reflects its ambition to be a key player in Middle East affairs, challenging the traditional dominance of Western powers. Saudi Arabia's shifting stance regarding Israel and its closer ties with China are part of a broader strategy to diversify its alliances and reduce its reliance on the United States. This strategy is motivated by a desire for greater independence and flexibility in regional politics. The United States has historically been a staunch supporter of Israel, providing it with military aid and diplomatic cover. The proposed sanctions by China and Saudi Arabia could strain U.S.-Saudi relations and complicate America's role in the region. The Middle East is already a volatile and complex region with numerous ongoing conflicts and rivalries. The involvement of China and Saudi Arabia in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict could further complicate regional dynamics and potentially lead to new alliances and tensions. The proposed sanctions by China and Saudi Arabia have not materialized at the time of writing, and it remains to be seen whether they will be implemented. However, their mere consideration has sparked a debate on the effectiveness and consequences of such measures in addressing the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. One of the key questions surrounding the proposed sanctions is whether they would effectively influence Israeli policy or behavior. Historically, sanctions have had mixed success in achieving their objectives. While they can exert economic and diplomatic pressure, their impact on resolving deeply rooted conflicts like the Israeli-Palestinian issue is limited. Israel has weathered international pressure and sanctions in the past, and has shown a strong commitment to its security concerns. Moreover, the United States plays a pivotal role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, providing significant military and diplomatic support to Israel. Any meaningful shift in the dynamics of the conflict would likely require the active involvement and cooperation of the United States, which may be hesitant to endorse sanctions against its ally. On the other hand, proponents of sanctions argue that they can serve as a tool to raise global awareness and condemnation of Israel's actions in Gaza, thereby increasing international pressure for a ceasefire and a negotiated settlement. The global community's response to the Gaza conflict has been mixed, with some nations and organizations calling for an immediate ceasefire, while others have been more cautious in their statements. The proposed sanctions also highlight the broader issue of international response to conflicts in the Middle East and the role of major powers. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is just one among many in the region, and the international community's inconsistent approach to addressing such conflicts has been a subject of criticism. In recent years, the Middle East has witnessed multiple conflicts, including the Syrian civil war, the Yemeni civil war, and ongoing tensions in Iraq and Iran. These conflicts have often been marked by significant humanitarian crises and instability, with various international actors pursuing their interests in the region. China and Saudi Arabia's involvement in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict demonstrates their willingness to engage in regional affairs and assert their influence. It is important to note that both China and Saudi Arabia have diverse motivations and interests in the Middle East beyond the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. China, for instance, is heavily reliant on the region for energy resources and is interested in maintaining stability for its Belt and Road Initiative projects. Saudi Arabia seeks regional influence and security while diversifying its alliances and reducing dependence on the United States. The potential sanctions, therefore, are part of a larger strategic calculus for these nations. China's willingness to align itself with the Palestinian cause may resonate with some countries in the region, potentially expanding its influence. Saudi Arabia's evolving stance reflects its desire to balance its relationships and protect its interests, even if it means adopting a more critical approach towards Israel. In this complex geopolitical landscape, the United States faces challenges in maintaining its traditional alliances in the Middle East. The shifting sands of international relations in the region could lead to new alliances and rivalries, potentially complicating efforts to address the various conflicts. The proposal by China and Saudi Arabia to impose sanctions on Israel in response to the Gaza conflict underscores the evolving dynamics in the Middle East and the broader geopolitical ambitions of these two countries. While the practical impact of such sanctions remains uncertain, they carry significant symbolic weight and could further isolate Israel on the international stage. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is deeply rooted and complex, defying easy solutions. While sanctions may be one tool in the international community's arsenal to pressure Israel and promote a peaceful resolution, they are unlikely to be a panacea. Thank you for sticking with me all the way to the end. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and make sure the notification bell is turned on so you don't miss a video.